is Ian McMechan, and this is a brief guide to English GCSE at Raffles. Okay, so the first thing I need to tell you is that English is not an options subject in year 10 and 11, for the reason that almost every university in the world and almost every employer of almost any kind will require you to have a GCSE in English and Maths at C or above. So English is compulsory for the reason that it is what's called a gateway qualification into other qualifications and progression routes such as employment. You're going to find it quite difficult to get into a good university or indeed any university pretty much without a GCSE in English of some kind. So having got that out of the way, I need to explain that even though it's not an option, there are various components to the English course in Key Stage 4, that is years 10 and 11 at Raffles, and there are ways in which you can do the course which would involve you doing one GCSE or two GCSEs. So most of you will be starting a course in year 10 which is designed to lead to first language, because that is the qualification that has the highest currency. That's the one that universities and employers tend to look for first. So we'd imagine that in a normal year around 85% of year 11 would eventually sit first language IGCSE. So I'll explain a little bit about that first. First language IGCSE at this school we take CIE, Cambridge International currently, and there are basically two entry routes for that. One entry route is 50% exam and 50% coursework, and the other entry route is 100% exam, but there are two exams instead of one. Previously we tended to do the exam and coursework route. We've changed recently to do the exam only route. However, as a rule, we're increasingly leaving it up to individual students to do whichever choice they want based on their performance in year 10 and the early part of year 11. So the first language IGCSE involves a reading exam, and in the reading exam you'll be given various extracts, one maybe from a newspaper article, one from a classic literary text such as a short story, or a novel, and another text which can be something like an extract from a website or a speech or a letter. And there are a range of questions which you have to answer, so some of them are short answer comprehension questions of the sort which you've been doing all the way through the school, maybe a little bit more complex. Some of them are questions about language techniques, i.e. the use of simile, metaphor, diction, that kind of thing. And some of them are extended questions which require you to imagine that you're a character from one of the extracts that you have read and to write your diary, for instance, or to write a letter to a friend about your experience. Who writes letters these days? An exam board, things that lots of people do. That exam is worth 50% of the marks, and everybody will do it. So everybody who takes first language will do the reading paper. It's not negotiable, I'm afraid. If you do coursework, that will be 50% of the qualification also, and you would write three separate assignments. One would be writing to narrate, you would write a story. One would be writing to describe, which is a bit like writing to narrate, but actually without the narrative elements, so not as much character, not as much dialogue, not as much action, very little plot. You're just describing a person or a thing or an experience. And the third piece is responding to an article where you argue a case, so you debate something based on a stimulus that you have chosen about usually a topic that is current or slightly controversial. You get to have a go at writing those pieces, so you draft them and then you get some feedback on the pieces, and then you submit them in March of year 11 as 50% of your qualification. And then you go on to do the exam in May, and that's it. If you choose not to do the coursework, you have to do another exam, a writing exam, and the writing exam will cover actually responding to an article, in which case you get an article given to you by the exam board and you write a discursive piece which debates the issues raised in the article. And then you have a choice for the section B of that exam in which you will either write to narrate or write to describe. So it covers the same skills and subject knowledge as the coursework, but it just does it in an examining situation. As I say, that's 50% of the qualification. Just to recap, therefore, first language is compulsory. It has 2 components, and the components are either 2 exams or an exam and coursework, depending on the route that you take. Each of the components in either route is worth 50%. First language is a particularly important qualification. Everybody's going to say that, but it's actually true in this case. And consequently, we enrol everybody for it. The second GCSE that is available in the English course, which we would expect that about 2/3 to 3/4 of a Year 11 candidature would take, is English literature. So you've spent quite a long time already in the school studying English literature. You've looked at some poems, you've read some novels, and you've discussed some plays and enacted them. And English literature is pretty much the same. So you will have one paper which is based on drama text. It lasts 45 minutes. You take the text in with you, you study the text over the course of the 2 years, and you answer an essay-style question based on character or theme or dramatic intention, something along those lines. The other exam, if you do the examined-only route, is poetry and prose. So the first section of that you will write about either a novel or some short stories. And the second section you will write about some poetry. Again, all of these things you will have studied in advance. The third component of the literature qualification is either an unseen exam based on a poem which you've never looked at before,